Hey, what's up, everybody? Good morning. It is Saturday, and it is Saturday morning live, Multifamily Unplugged. Hey, glad that you're here. If you are joining us for the first time, I am super glad you're here. Make sure that if you're on YouTube watching us, that you hit that subscribe button and stay connected because we are always bringing out fresh content every day, good tips, good pointers on how to build your multifamily business, how to grow your entrepreneur skills, your leadership skills, how to just help you get better. You know, one thing I always talk about is none of us grow professionally unless we're growing personally. And to grow personally, we have to be plugged in, right? We have to get some information. We have to get knowledge from other people. And I'm not saying that I have it all, but I'm saying that I bring some guests on that are a heck of a lot smarter than me, know a lot more than me, and can deliver a lot more content than I can. If you're on Instagram or Facebook, like us, love us, help us out, and continue to follow us. And by all means, tell somebody about us. So I always talk about intentionality. What are you intentional about today? What are you doing this weekend? Spending time with family? Are you working out a little more? Maybe catching up on some work? What are you doing? How intentional are you being about your life? You know, we're going to talk about intentionality this morning on the show a little bit because my guest, Siraj Ahmad, with Advantage Capital, is here with us today. And I'm excited to talk about small multifamily and how to get started in this business. I think that what we talk about today will really be interesting for the new investor, the newer investor. Hey, I'm not saying if you're a seasoned investor, you're not going to get something from this, because I always believe spending time in coaching, mentoring, listening to seminars and speakers, podcasts, you're going to pick something up, some little nugget that's going to change something that you're doing. So let's bring Ahmad in, right, or Siraj in right now. Hey, good morning, Siraj.
Hey, Mike, how's it going? Good to see you.
Good to be seen, man.
It's a great morning here in Chicago. I know we're both located here, so I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to our chat here, man.
Yeah. Hey, one thing I say is Chicago's a great city, right? I actually just did a post this week. I took a picture of the weather, and I said, "Where the heck is spring?" It's like no sun, rain, snow in the forecast, and it's just kind of been gloomy and chilly. So, and being in Chicago, it's damp, but where's it at already this year?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm anxious for spring to come. Although we've had a decently mild winter. It hasn't been that bad. And I don't know if I heard correctly, but was it last Friday or maybe a few days ago that it was the first official day of spring?
Yeah, the 21st, I think it
Okay.
is that first official day of spring, and that was
Okay.
last week. So
Okay. Nice. Yeah. So we're right out the corner, I hope.
yeah, yeah, right. Just about to turn the corner. So
Yeah.
that's good. Hey, so listen, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And one thing I always ask my guests at the beginning of my shows is, in one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Very good question. Okay. Um, if I just kind of had to pick right at the top of my head, I would say that I'm known to be very ambitious. And I mean, if you want me to go into a little bit of detail on that, why I think that.
Yeah, absolutely. Where's that come from? Why,
Yeah.
why are you ambitious?
I've always been, a very foundational type of person. Like, once I get to a certain goal, I'm always kind of thinking, what's next? I always have set kind of higher goals for myself. And once I get there, I'm like, okay, what's next? I get kind of bored of being stagnant. And so while doing that, being ambitious requires a lot of perseverance. And that's probably the next best thing that describes me. Once I, set my mind to doing something, I'm laser focused and I'm like, I got to get there no matter what. So I think those are the two words that best describe me.
So listen, here's what I want to know right now. What are you working on in your life that you are laser focused like that on?
Yeah, it's honestly deal flow. We are about to close on a property in just about 2 weeks. And directly after that, the pipeline is looking very, very thin. So the sales pipeline and getting more leads into the door, so that we can underwrite more deals and just look to close our next acquisition, because we do have quite a bit of an aggressive goal this year of getting to 150 units, which means basically tripling our portfolio. So we're currently at right about at 50 mark. So the goal is to get to 150, and in order to do that, I got to be buying about 25 a quarter. So we're closing 9 in the next 2 weeks, which means that in Q2 we got to pick up the slack of the remaining 14 and also an additional 25. So very, very laser focused on that. And then actually is growing my online presence. So that, one of the reasons why we're doing this is this. So, I mean, it's about growing the portfolio, which will improve the business. But I think that the best way, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, kind of starting off is, we're doing, you met so many people, and I think it might have helped you catapult your growth much faster when you just know the right person. So I'm intentionally focused on that this year. So the goal, I mean, I don't even have a website yet. I haven't updated my LinkedIn yet. So Instagram was just made, a few months ago. So it's about, actively posting content, actively talking about what I'm doing on my daily basis. Because a lot of my people in my network, my LinkedIn professional network, doesn't even know that I'm doing this. My used to be at Deloitte and Touche. They don't even know that I'm doing this, which is which is the best one of the best networks to be in, right? I mean, I was around such high-paying consultants and partners and such. If they knew what I was doing, they might be more inclined to be like, "Hey, Suraj, tell me more about it. Tell me more about what you're doing. Maybe I got some money to park with you." So,
yeah, that's awesome. Two things I always tell people is, I think two of the most important things that we can do in the multifamily space, whether you're on the small side or the big scale side, like we tend to do, is build relationships, let people know what you're doing. And there's multiple kinds of relationships. And the other piece is the underwriting, right? Mm-hmm. Even if you're not the underwriter, you need to know the numbers and be able to talk to those numbers with your potential LPs and that. So now, listen, why don't you talk about your background a little bit? Tell us a little bit of history about you. I know you're at Deloitte right now, doing multifamily on the side. How'd you get here, and what's your goal?
Yeah, absolutely. So I come from a very, I'm going way far back. I come from very humble beginnings, man. Very, very humble beginnings. I come from a family of 7. So including my parents, 7 of us. We grew up in a small town home in Skokie area. And so, sharing a room with 3 brothers was fun, right? I mean, you could imagine that. So did that for quite a bit of time. And my brothers and I are super close, and thankfully because of that. But it taught, seeing kind of the household struggle growing up and stuff, it was tough. And I just moved here just about in 2001. So I was 12 years old when I moved. And, coming from a third world country to the US, it's a big change. Yeah. Of course, we were coming here for a better opportunity, but in order to get to the better opportunity, this is where, kind of you asked me earlier, like, what word describes the ambitious and the perseverance comes from here, is because you had to work so hard in order to, kind of get ahead of the people who kind of already had it easy here. And so growing up in that and seeing kind of the struggles and getting to that, that goal, which you had to work 5 times harder for than the person. I mean, imagine me coming here to be able to speak English. That was not something, English was not my first language at that point. So to be able to just have a fluent conversation and to get to that point, you got to work much harder. So that kind of set the foundation for it all. And then it was just, getting to, an immigrant mindset is come here, go to school, get a job, retire at 65, save up in that time, buy a house, buy a car, all those steps, ladders. So I did that. I started off, after high school, went to DePaul, majored in finance and accounting and MIS, did my CPA directly after, and I set a goal that I wanted to get to Deloitte and Touche. It was one of the most prestigious firms to work at, and I set that goal. As soon as I kind of started over there, I started to buy up real estate on the side, and I'm a very foundational person, Mike. I'm I'm not like the shiny object and run to it and just buy that big thing. It's always like, how could I want to have a solid foundation so that everything that grows on top is strong, and we have a solid, knowledge base around it, and then it grows in a gradual manner rather than just a blow up. So I started buying condos actually. My first condo that I ever bought in Elmwood Park in 2014. Get this, it was $40,000, or sorry, $38,000.
Wow.
And as soon as I bought it, it was in a nice, really nice condo building. Pool, all that kind of stuff, parking, a garage parking, indoor heated. And I got it rented out for like, what's it, like $750 at that time. And I was just like, this was like magic. The tenant was great. So you had to go through the whole process of, obviously, in the beginning, you're managing it yourself, right? So got it rented out, and I was just kind of addicted. I'm like, holy crap, this $750 just a month, this keeps coming in. It had already been like 3 or 4 months in. Excuse me.
Okay.
So it'd been 3 or 4 months in, and I'm like, I'm just addicted to this thing. So just kind of started buying up. And at that time, I was buying everything up in cash, no leveraging, nothing. It was just save up money, buy the next property. And so I did that for about 3 or 4 months and realized like, holy crap, I'm out of cash. So it was just about a year in, and I brought on my first investor. And I was super excited and super nervous at the same time, having that first pitch. I mean, imagine going, doing anything for the first time, and let alone talking to an investor. So, it was at a Starbucks conversation. Luckily, it was a warm introduction by my CPA. And actually, that guy still invested with me. So that was back in 2016-ish, I want to say. And now we're in 2023. So, whatever, 6, 7 years later, 8 years later, he still invested with me. And, we are going on new deals. So, again, kind of the foundational base, brought on the first investor, then brought on the second investor. And at this time, we were buying in cash. Then we started buying some smaller 2, 3, 4 unit buildings, and just kept growing the portfolio very, very, very slowly because, I had to wait to save up the cash so that I could deploy it. Then there came a point, I'm like, this is just way, way too slow. And then realized the power of leveraging and the whole BRRRR model. And that really stuck with me, the BRRRR model, being able to, park the money, buy a good value add deal, and then being able to refinance it for a higher amount and take the capital out and reinvest it into the next. So really like that model. And it's just kind of this how I've been growing. And just about 2 years ago, right around after COVID, I went full time actually into real estate. So now I am 100% in for about 2 years. And the reason why I quit was because I wanted to buy commercial assets at this point. So, I was getting tired of this whole, if I buy a 2-unit building, it's worth the same as the next one. And so, really, and I was noticing that all my deals are value add. And in order for me to, get the true benefit out of the increase in net income was commercial assets. Yeah. And so that's why I went full time into it just about a couple of years ago. And, and the model was proven in 2021, that, hey, what I'm doing works because we bought quite a bit of deals. 2022 was slower. And honestly, I mean, looking in 2022 year, I set an aggressive goal for myself and couldn't even achieve it anywhere near it. But I'm kind of glad I didn't because, deals were super overvalued. And kind of now looking back, I'm like, I kind of think I made the right move of not buying an overvalued asset, especially with current rates. And one of the things that, another operator and I were talking about last week was a lot of syndicators in 2021 and 2022 had built in a refinance component the next 2 years, right? So imagine you had a 3.5% rate locked in, and a year and a half later you were looking to refinance, or 2 years later you're looking to refinance, and all of a sudden the rates have now jumped up to 6% or more, and how that affects your financials. So I'm kind of glad that I hadn't done that and haven't done a lot of deals with that type of underwriting. So I think that's where my journey is, and kind of where I'm headed in the future is, one of the things this year is looking at more retail and office. That's the other thing that I'm starting to look at as well, and more opportunistically, just because, office obviously is not doing well. So you can, find deals for less than $100 a square foot for a nice brick solid building in Elmhurst, for example. Seems like a decent thing to go into when there's a good value add component there.
Well, here's, just real quick, something that's really interesting. We just bought a deal in Tulsa.
Okay.
And there's a couple of old office buildings that some multifamily developers have bought and retrofitted. So start looking at maybe some of that abandoned office through a different lens and saying, hey, could I retrofit this? Could I make this something other than what it currently is? And, maybe multifamily, maybe senior housing, especially in Elmhurst, maybe senior housing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows, right? But just for whatever that's worth. Hey, you really kind of focus on the small multifamily side, though, don't you?
Yeah. So now we're buying, or we're looking, my buy box is going to be anything between, on the commercial side, anything between 8 units all the way up to about 50. And the reason why that goal is there is because I have about $1 million of capital available from investors that ready to deploy. So, buying, I try to buy something around $100,000 a unit. So that gets me to about $5 million of value, and putting down at 25%, you're at about, 1 to 1.25 million. So,
all right. So I want listeners to key into this, because you just said something very important, right? Is you have a buy box.
Yes,
I think a lot of times investors go into this world like throwing darts and arrows at anything, right? And I learned my first deal that I needed to have a buy box.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to understand that. And if you don't know what that is, call Siraj and find out from him how he put that together. Call me, we'll walk you through. But I believe that you need to have a buy box so that when you pull up in front of a place or pull in a parking lot, you know exactly this is it, right?
Yeah. And not only, for me, it's not just a buy box of the building. I actually, whenever I call up, and we'll kind of go in more into that too, of my strategy on how I connect with other brokers. But one of the things that the brokers know, and one of the things I explain to them, is my seller avatar. What kind of seller I want to buy from. What I like to focus on is specific sellers that have owned a property for at a minimum of 5 years, ideally 15 years. So it's going to be more of the older owners that are kind of looking to retire or are moving on to Arizona and Texas and such, that have taken care of the exterior of the building, the big CapEx stuff, and they just haven't touched the interior because they haven't had a need to, right? Like if someone's owned the building for the last 30 years, their cost basis is so low on it that really don't need to raise rents at all. Yeah. And they don't want to disrupt and they're typically self-managing. So they don't want to disrupt the operations and hurt their pocket at all. So they'll keep it as is. And that's, for me, are the perfect opportunities, because I can go in, I'm at a point where I can, disrupt the tenants and improve the value. And that's what we're doing on the building that we're closing on in a couple of weeks too.
Yeah. So what's your, how many, when we talk about small multifamily, how many units, from what to what?
For me, it's all from 8 all the way to 50 units.
Okay.
Is what I can buy from. And then I actually have, again, kind of going back to the buy box, I also buy 2, 3, 4 flats specifically, but only in 3 specific suburbs, because I already have a portfolio set up over there. So it's just kind of like adding on to the machine, just buy, especially if I can buy, like the bird type of deal. So if I can buy them at X price, do my value add, whether it's through renovation or whether it's through better, efficient management, et cetera, and then go to my commercial bank and refinance that property and move the money over into the next deal.
So here's one thing I want you to talk about a little bit. You're doing a lot, right? And you're looking at a lot of things. How are you structuring your time having a full-time W-2, right?
Oh, sorry, let me interrupt. I just about 2 years ago, left the corporate job completely. So now I'm full-time. My LinkedIn is not completely updated, and I think that's why there's a mix up there.
Okay, got it. All right, so you did leave your W-2.
Yeah.
But even going back when you were working, how'd you structure your time? Because you got a lot of units under your belt at this point, and for a part-time investor, how do you structure your time?
Man, that was the biggest thing, and that was one of the reasons why I kind of left, because I realized my time was getting very tight. So at Deloitte, we were traveling quite a bit, traveling almost every week, if not every, maybe every other week, or sometimes weekly. So leaving Monday morning, Tuesday morning, coming back Thursday night, right? So it was like this: going to the client meeting, flying in, go to the client meetings, go to the dinner directly after, come back around 7-ish. Sit from 7-ish to like probably around 11:30, 12, have dinner in between, and look at deals all day. You couldn't talk to the brokers because at that point it's already 7 o'clock, too late. And depending on time zone I was in, it might've been even farther later in Chicago. So my weekends were spent on the deals that I'd kind of underwrote and looked at, or at least like initial underwriting done. I would look at on the weekends and definitely connect with brokers on Fridays and Saturdays. That's what I was doing heavy. So it was a lot of time spent, but it was all of it was time management. I mean, my calendar was like, booked out in very, very small increments of, which broker I'm calling at what time and pre-scheduled appointments. So time management was key.
So let me ask you this. Do you get all your deal flow from brokers? And are they commercial brokers, residential brokers? Are you ready to skyrocket your investment portfolio and leave a legacy? Are you tired of inconsistent returns received in the stock market? Then it's time you take a look at alternative investment options like a passive investment in multifamily real estate. No tenants, trash, or toilets. Just a solid return on an annual investment, including quarterly returns along the way. These lower risk and secure assets are also a great hedge against inflation. If you want to hear more about these types of opportunities, email me directly to schedule a 15-minute consultation to see if you qualify. You can email me at mike@mycoreintentions.com.
Yeah, no, good question. So when I look back at all the deals that I've done or even gotten under contract on, probably 15% of them have been through commercial brokers. Everything else has been either off market or residential brokers. And that's where I focus my effort now. So one of the things that I'm doing today after we get off here, and I do this on probably every one month or for sure 2 months, 100%. I have a list of about 35 brokers, and I'm growing that list even more, of all 35 residential brokers only.
All right. So here's a key point, right? I tell people all the time, have multiple relationships with different brokerages at different brokerage firms, because the more you have, the more deals you're going to see. So go on. Great point.
Yeah, and I'll walk you through and kind of how I even set up this database, right? So about 30-ish brokers now, and I'm calling them every single month, or at least once every 2 months. And what I'm calling them for is like, I don't start off with like, hey, Joe, you got a deal for me? It's not that. It's more so, hey, Joe, how's it going, man? And it's more of a relational thing. I'm building a relationship here. So the next time Joe remembers, Siraj does this and Siraj does that. And you know what? Maybe I can give this deal to Siraj, and he just kind of pops up in his head. So, I'm talking about, Ramadan started. I might talk to them about that today. I'm, like, man, I'm hungry today. Or, how are your kids doing? How's your family doing? How was your weekend? Hey, I remember last year you were telling me about, your vacation that you went on. So this is making this relationship with them so that, they remember me the next time when the deals have come up. And honestly, that's worked multiple times. And in fact, I even do that with sellers too. Some of the sellers that I have transacted with before that I know that have multiple apartments, 2 flats and 3 flats, I'll even do the same with them. Just 2 days ago, I messaged one of the guys I was under contract with at a property in Downers Grove that didn't work out. He lives in California, but he told me that in summertime he's planning on coming. And so I was driving past his building the other day, and I remembered, and I emailed him like, hey, John, let me know when you're back in town next time. I'd love to take you out for coffee or something. So going to this broker thing, right? So residential brokers for me are key, because what happens is typically the residential brokers will just end up putting something on the MLS without even realizing that the gold mine that they might be holding, because they don't deal in this type of space at all. So sometimes they might not even know that the net income is what's going to determine the value of this building, and the current rents are this, and they should get to this, and all of a sudden the building is worth that much. They're just simply in a single family home space, so they know comp to a comp. Like, hey, this building sold for $1 million, so this should sell for $1 million, and that's where I've been able to find value. Like, I'll give you an example. The last deal that I bought in Lisle, the seller or the broker who gave me this lead, it was at 11:45 p.m. at night on a random Thursday night or something. I remember it was. At 11:45 p.m. I read that, and all he did is he just wrote down rent gross this number, expenses this number, and this is the net income, and that's all he gave me. And he gave me that, and he said, and he wrote the purchase price in, and I said, Abdul, make the LOI in right now and submit this in. Because I knew the deal that he was holding was very, very good. And that deal today is, I bought it for $700,000, and that thing today is worth about 1.3. And that was just about a year and a half ago. So
how many units?
That one's a 10 unit.
10 unit.
And this is in downtown Lisle, by the way.
Yeah.
So, great market since you're familiar in Chicago.
Yeah.
So where was I going with it? Yeah. So the brokers, right? And this came from a relationship from broker, kind of keeping in touch with him. And he has not fed me an apartment building deal in probably 2 years, Mike. So that's how long it took me to finally find this. And I don't know if it's, for some brokers, it might never work out, but for others, it might just work out in 2 months, or other one might work out in a year. I don't know. So let me go over kind of how I, built this database too, right? I think that users might find, or your viewers might find value in this. So what I did is I went on redfin.com. I'm not a broker. I don't have MLS access. So I just went on redfin.com and I looked at all the sold comps in the last 2 years. So whatever time that you run it from today, March 23rd, look at last 2 years. You can go on redfin.com, go under, instead of for sale, press sold, and then you select last 2 years and you press that button, and then you put how many bedrooms, or sorry, you put the type, select the type, you select multifamily. So I wanted to see which brokers have dealt in the small multifamily section in the last 2 years and who sold more than one property in that area that I'm focused in. So I did, number of beds, all that kind of stuff. And now I have this, it spits out all these things. And then on the bottom, it says download export. So I press that download export in an Excel file, and it spits out, the broker's name, phone number, the address of the property, number of beds, and then the link to the property too. So you can press that button and see the link. So I downloaded this list, and then from there, I kind of sorted it. I have an Excel background because, being a CPA and all that. So I kind of sorted it by the number of transactions that I have that broker's done. So first, I called up the top brokers in that area. Like, one of my markets, one of the brokers has 8 transactions, and I'm like, okay, this is definitely a guy I got to call and connect with because he's spitting out deals in the last 2 years. So I'll and next to that, I'll make a notes column, and I'll say what day I called them and what we talked about as well. So that way I can remember the next time I call them, I can kind of look through those notes, hey, this guy has one daughter, this guy has one dog, whatever it is. So we have something to kind of talk about the next time we call. So that's how this database was built, and it just keeps growing and growing. And now I'm doing the same exact thing today, and just adding on more brokers to that list.
Yeah. So I really want people right now to understand the power of relationships, right? If you're in the commercial, larger multifamily space like I am, I have relationships in the markets that I want to be in with Marcus and Millichap brokers, CBRE, Colliers, Berkadia, right? JLL. I want to be getting every deal. Mm-hmm. On the residential side, those brokers have the MLS. So they're all sharing anyhow. But on the commercial side, there is no MLS. Each broker has their own listing. Make sure as a buyer that you're getting plenty of inventory to look at, because the more you underwrite, the better you get at it. And so when somebody hands you a cocktail napkin and says, here's the NOI, here's the purchase price, here's your gross rent income, make me an offer right now. You knew, because you knew the market, right? Mm-hmm. Because you knew the market so well. Normally, I would have told you, I would have said, hey, if somebody gives me numbers on a cocktail napkin, just run. But I got that. What you said, there was a big difference in there. So good for you, though. That's great.
But it goes back to what you said, is knowing your buy box. If you know your buy box and you're constantly underwriting deals in that market, and if you see, the normal price per unit in that market is $125,000, and now all of a sudden you're, getting pitched a deal that's at a, 100 or less, you're like, something is here. I need to look into it further, So that's kind of where I'm doing.
So let's flip gears here for a minute. And, obviously you're doing that. You're kind of focused on this space. You want to get to 150 units. Any aspirations of doing bigger deals, 100, 200 unit deals? And do you just want to stay in Chicago, or are you looking to be in other markets?
Yeah, no, good questions again. Currently where I stand, where, I haven't looked out, 10 years ahead, but looking within the next 5 years, I think I'm going to continue staying in Chicago. And there's a couple of reasons for it. Even my mastermind groups, I've discussed this, because everyone's like, Siraj, why Chicago, man? Get out. As an investor, majority of my mastermind is focused on probably the Sun Belt states,
Yep.
Parts of Midwest, not in Chicago, not in Illinois. Indiana is probably better, all that kind of stuff. But I focused on Chicago because one, it's home base. I know it well, like most other investors won't. And the other thing is that the outside investors are not bringing their capital to Chicago, which compared to go to Atlanta or Florida, you have a ton of competition, ton of outside competition coming over there, which I don't. So here, I just got to worry about, guys like Bekovich and guys like, Cast Management that are probably buying up properties that are local to the Chicago market. So it's not.
Remember Pangea?
What was that?
You knew who Pangea was, right?
Yeah,
They sold this year, right?
Yeah.
They sold their entire portfolio and got out.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was an interesting move. But go ahead. I mean,
I don't know where they went. Where they ended up actually investing. Do you know where did they end up buying in?
I don't know. My understanding is they just got out.
Yeah, so that might have been a different move. So so going back to this, so I think it's more so just competitive nature. I'm not a very aggressive guy. I'm not a very that I'm going to make the terms like very, very favorable, all that kind of stuff. As much I try to be. I like to think of real estate as for a game for me, because I'm not the smartest guy in the room. So I want to have like a level playing field. So for me, Chicago gives me that, and Chicago is very stable. In the last 2 years, you heard of Idaho, blow up Boise, but at the same time, in the last few months, you've also heard it kind of go down too. Chicago is not that way. It's going to stay at this gradual rate and probably even increase a bit, every single year. So that's one of the things that I like about staying here. Rents are strong. Rents have increased, not at 30%, but they have increased, 12 to 15% in the last few years. And that gives you enough to work off of. So that's the reason why I'm staying here. In terms of, and the other question was about buying bigger deals. Absolutely. Definitely want to get there. But again, remember, I kind of told you I'm foundational. So I like to, grow my portfolio gradually so that, the operations could be set in. So, for me, I have an in-house property management. I don't outsource it. So property management in-house. So we do have a team set up for it. But in order for me, I can't take on 100 unit and add it on. All of a sudden, the machine's going to get broken. So I need to, build it up more so that we can buy larger apartment buildings.
Okay, awesome. So you have vertically integrated your management. Good for you.
Yeah, and slowly I got to bring on construction. That's something that we're kind of lacking on. So, or not lacking, but we're going to get there eventually, is bringing construction in-house.
So two things I always talk about are cash flow and long-term wealth, right? We got to create short-term cash flow and long-term wealth. My experience in Chicago has always been that there's cash flow, but we don't get that long-term wealth. There's not a big appreciation play. Are you seeing that starting to change, or is it the same? What are you seeing in that?
Yeah. So for me, what I see is, look, I'm buying value add deals. I just kind of gave you an example of that Lyle building where, there was a more than a 50% increase in the value, or almost 50% increase in value. So we bought it for 700,000. I think the building's worth about 1.3 ish. The deal that we're buying in about 2 weeks, we're buying it for 540. The appraisal came in at 1.1. And even the lender and I agreed that was super conservative. And I think that it's worth about 1.2 to 1.3. So my point is, if we're buying a value add deal, I'm not super concerned about that because we're already getting a huge pop in value kind of right away.
Got it.
Now, unless, something crazy happens in Chicago in the next couple of years there's a mayor change happening, all that kind of stuff. But actually that mayor change really won't affect me because my stuff is in the suburbs of Chicago. But my point is, if something absurd happens where, we have a heavy migration going out, is different. Right now, we're seeing 1%-ish outflow every single year in terms of migration. And we are so dense as it is. I don't think it hasn't affected my number of days on the market when we're leasing out our apartments. So, and the rents are consistently increasing. We have not had to bring our rents down or even stay stagnant. We're increasing by $25, $50 on renewals.
Yeah. Interesting. You do focus mainly, so you don't do anything in the city proper. Everything is in the suburbs. And is it any suburb or specific suburbs?
Yeah, very, very specific suburbs. City I completely stay away from because it has that, why when you look at Chicago versus kind of Illinois, Chicago is very, very tenant friendly. Illinois as a whole, if you take on Chicago out of the equation, not as tenant friendly. Although, you know, being around the suburbs, you still get that, you know, influence from Chicago. And then what was the other question you said? No, I don't buy in every single suburb. There is a specific, like, I don't go to south suburbs, like, you know, Orland Park and such, unless it's a big enough building. Like if I'm buying maybe like a 30 unit, 24 unit or something like that, I'd probably, you know, expand operations because I don't have any operations set up over there. My primary portfolio has been set up in north side of Chicago, like around Skokie and Niles area. And then the other parts of it are in Elmwood Park, Forest Park, Berwyn. And then the other portfolio that I'm really trying to grow on is DuPage County. I love right now. Really trying to grow over there.
If you're in Elmwood Park, you go to Stone Park and just Elmwood Park. Okay.
Elmwood Park, Forest Park, and Berwyn.
Two different demographics, right?
That's right. And that's what it is. I mean, I am focusing on a specific type of tenant clientele. And so, you know, Stone Park wouldn't get me there.
Yeah. Melrose Park, Franklin Park, all those are different demographic than what you get in Elmwood Park. It's just like Lyle's a different demographic than you're going to get in Skokie or Niles.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Good for you. Hey, listen, I could probably talk to you for hours. So I think when we end the call, we need to book a lunch. You and I need to get together.
Definitely.
As we start to wind this thing down, I really like to ask 3 bonus questions. Seeing as how you're from Chicago, let's keep it all Chicago focused, okay? What's the best book you ever read?
I'm forgetting the name, but Chris Voss's negotiations one.
Okay. Yeah, the FBI Negotiator.
Yeah. Love that book. Absolutely. I mean, that book has taught me so many things, and probably as I'm reading it, I'm like, man, I'm dealing with that situation right now. I should use this, and it works. So definitely a great book to. I can look up the name, but yeah, go ahead with the next question.
Awesome. And then best restaurant.
Maple and Ash currently.
Oh, okay. Big time. Nice place. And then best tourist attraction.
Man, I really like the Maggie Daly Park right now. Allows, not as you know, heavy populated, and you know, allows you. I mean, this is in the summertime. Remember that, Mike. I mean, we're approaching it, so that's why I'm kind of thinking of it. You know, but for biking and for, you know, the ambiance, the vibe, just really enjoy it over there.
Yeah, it is a great place and great tennis courts there, and a lot of. I was like, the
book is called "Never Split the Difference."
Oh, okay, right. By Chris Voss.
Yep.
So, listen, it's been great. If people want to connect with you, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, my email address, sahmed1009@gmail.com, and also on my Instagram, Siraj88. Connect with me anytime. Happy to answer any questions. Let me know that you're coming from Mike's reference, and happy to chat with you.
Okay, awesome. Good for you. Hey, listen, I'm going to move you to the back room. I'm going to say goodbye and then hang out with me for a minute, would you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope the viewers enjoyed it and got some value out of it.
Yeah, lots of great stuff today. Thank you. Hang on. Stand by. Hey, everybody. That was a great interview. And, my encouragement for you right now is to go back and listen to that a couple of times, because there are some golden nuggets that Siraj and I talked about that you will really pick up from. Buy box, relationship building, especially with brokers, how to source good deals for yourself. There's a lot in the last 25 minutes that you're going to be able to pick up. And, like anything else, repetition builds reinforcement. Go back and listen to this podcast a couple of times. Share it with somebody, share it with a business partner, your spouse, somebody who maybe needs to hear some of this information. You could tell from his passion and his excitement how much the business matters to him, and how much you can get from the business. So, hey, listen, thanks for being here today. We're here every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Follow us on YouTube and get tons of great content like this and other stuff. If you are looking to passively invest, if you're looking to actively invest, reach out. If I can help you in any way answer any questions, I certainly will do that. Suraj, the same thing. Look forward to seeing you next week. Everybody have a